Like most kids, I loved theme parks growing up. Now most people would tend to grow out of this phase. Except I didn't. In fact, I went in the complete opposite direction and became obsessed. A large part of that was because of YouTube and channels like Justin Scarred and Rebel Band Geek Productions, now known as Theme Star. I started to get nostalgic about old attractions and learning about the history behind them. As a result, I found any way I could to get to the parks as much as I could in the 2010s. And here are 10 rides and attractions that I really liked. The rules for this list are simple. If I went on the ride or attraction between January 1st, 2010 and December 31st, 2019, regardless if the ride currently exists, it qualifies for the list. So let's get on with it. Here are my top 10 theme park rides that I went on in the 2010s on today's pilot episode of The Magic Hangover.
Been blowing on my back. I was born in the soul of misery, and I never had me a name. They just gave me a number when I was
Little context before we get started. I live in Northern California, specifically Oakland. So making frequent trips to the Southern California or even the Florida theme parks wasn't something I could do. As a result, there are some popular rides that I didn't get to go on. Here are some of the more notable ones. Alrighty, on with the show. I like Universal Studios, and I also like simulator rides. But one of my least favorite things about Universal Studios Hollywood is that most of the rides in the park are simulator rides, ranging from really good to just straight up lazy. Thankfully, this one is a good one. Incorporating elements of a dark ride, Transformers offers a surprisingly immersive experience, especially for a screen-heavy ride. It ranks pretty low on my list because I'm just not a huge Transformers fan, and I would have liked to have seen this tech used on another film franchise by Universal. I mean, I could see this working really well with the Fast and Furious movies. Still, you will enjoy this ride even if you're not a fan of the franchise. I just wouldn't go if the wait time is more than 30 minutes. Some people might be upset that this isn't higher on my list, and from a technical standpoint, you have a case. I'm just not a huge Indiana Jones fan. I mean, the movies were fun, but nothing I would really go out of my way to see again. The ride, on the other hand, is an absolutely amazing experience. The ride itself is kind of like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, but actually wild. The ride whips you back and forth as if you're traveling a really rough terrain, even though if you look down at the actual tracks, there isn't any. The sets you drive past are ripped straight from the movies. Even some of the additions they made in later years, such as the projection mapping on some of the sets, enhances what's already an incredible experience. This ride technically exists in Florida too, in the form of Dinosaur, but they somehow managed to mess it up. So if you can, get to Disneyland and ride this one instead. Animatronic Humphrey Bogart. That's it, next entry. Okay, fine, you want more. Without question, this is going to be the calmest ride on my list. But I just love the amount of effort that went into making these life-size dioramas for some of cinema's most memorable moments. I love how cheesy the ride interruptions are. I love that this ride acknowledges other film studios except for Universal for obvious reasons. And of course, the fact that this ride is housed inside an almost exact replica of Grauman's Chinese Theater in LA. I just wish that this ride had been updated every so often just to show some more contemporary movies. But sadly, this ride closed in 2017, so the only real way to experience it now is through YouTube videos, which is something I highly recommend, so you can at least experience a taste of this love letter to the art of movies. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this one. I love the original car plant theme of version 1 as I thought it just fit better in Epcot's pseudo-educational environment. Version 2 is just odd. You would think that a Tron-inspired aesthetic would win me over, but it just doesn't work as well as version 1. The added element of designing and testing your own car, though cool in concept, just feels a bit tacked on in execution. I'm just glad that the actual ride didn't change too much because it's still a lot of fun. The sharp turns and terrains are a lot tamer than something like Indiana Jones, but it's the speed test at the end of the attraction that really takes the cake. Version 1 will always have my heart, but version 2 is it's an okay rebound. Hashtag make Tron 3. I don't really understand why Disney's Animal Kingdom gets the mixed reception that it does. It's easily one of the best theme parks in the entire resort. It has great food, and even though it doesn't have a whole lot of rides, the few rides it does have are really good. Well, for the most part. Case in point, Kilimanjaro Safari. Now this ride has seen a couple of different versions, including one that involved stopping poachers. I actually like that one, but it seems that today it's just a straightforward safari, which in many ways is better. The cleverly hidden barriers gives you the illusion that the animals are just within arm's reach. Hell, sometimes if you're lucky, they can get close. Maybe too close. But still, this is an experience that just can't be matched. I mean, unless you go on an actual safari in Africa, which would be a million times better. Sadly, this variation of the ride is no longer available at Universal Studios Hollywood, as it had to make room for Jurassic World. So instead of being upset about what's currently there, let's pay our respects to a true Universal classic. Until a certain Wizarding World opened, Jurassic Park the Ride was Universal's most immersive ride, as long as you ignored that stupid building in the distance. In this ride's prime, it was nothing short of spectacular. The realistic movement of the dinosaurs, the foliage and making you feel like you're actually on Jurassic Park, and of course, that ending. With the Ford Explorer falling, the Dilophosaurus spitting at you, the honestly underwhelming Velociraptors coming at you, and of course, the T-Rexes. Oh yeah, and there's that 80-foot drop, but the T-Rex. Being a huge Jurassic Park fan, this was something I only dreamed of. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, Universal didn't really take good care of this ride, and towards the end of its life cycle, it looked pretty bad. The dinosaurs really didn't move as swiftly as they used to, and it kind of took you out of the experience. Judging by the videos that I've seen, it doesn't look like they've learned their lesson. But when this ride did work, even a little bit, my inner 9-year-old just jumped with joy as my dream of going to Jurassic Park finally came true. It may be gone, but not forgotten. I was gonna put Star Tours on here originally, because on top of being a Disneyland classic, I kind of feel it has a little bit more to offer with its random ride sequences that give you a different experience every time you get on. But ultimately, it doesn't make the cut simply because you freaking get to fly the Millennium Falcon! Yes, it's essentially a giant arcade machine. Yes, you can only play one mission, and yes, it's hard to fully take in the experience because you're always pushing buttons and making sure you don't actually crash the Falcons. There are many other flaws, but none of them overtake the fact that you're actually flying the Millennium Falcon. This is the dream of every Star Wars fan come true. The only thing that would make this ride damn near perfect is if, like Star Tours, there were some different adventures you could go on, like maybe the Kessel Run or even the Death Star Trench Run. Okay, maybe that last one is unlikely considering that Galaxy's Edge takes place between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, which is well after the Death Star. But who knows, maybe Disney will loosen up some of those rules someday, especially with The Mandalorian making it difficult not to. But for now, this one is an absolute must for all Star Wars fans. When it comes to theming and atmosphere, Universal Studios has ironically always lacked in this department. But they became a comparable foe to Disney when it opened the wizarding world of Harry Potter, and nowhere is that more evident than the area's main event. Using a ride technology that is far too time consuming for me to try to explain, this ride mixes simulator technology with that of a dark ride, times 10. The floating benches make you feel completely weightless as you fly through a lot of the familiar locations of the wizarding world. It is truly incredible, and I guarantee you probably have never felt anything like this. The only downside to this ride are the simulator portions. The rest of the ride is so well themed and immersive that these simulator portions just kind of take you out of the experience, especially when you take into account that the portions with Daniel Radcliffe and his friends looks pretty bad. However, in all honesty, it's kind of hard to complain about this one too much because everything else that works is friggin' impressive. I kind of hope that Disney can find the way to utilize this technology as well, because I have a feeling that they would make something pretty awesome too. Or maybe not. I was fortunate to go on both Florida and California Space Mountain. And while I prefer the queue and the Florida version a lot more, California just has the overall better ride. Ride vehicles are a lot more comfortable. The ride feels, in my opinion, a little bit more intense. The ride has more variations that are equally fantastic. The soundtrack is better. I mean, I could just go on and on. My only real complaint is that the Star Wars overlay does tend to wear out its welcome pretty quick. Especially when you take into account that you can get your Star Wars fix pretty much anywhere else in the park. Or, maybe in that land they just built. Every Disneyland fan has at least one ride that is an absolute must every time you go. For me, without question, that's Space Mountain. As for my must ride at Disney World, so in 2016, people lost their damn minds when it was announced that Disney's California Adventure was losing their version of the Tower of Terror. Meanwhile, I was at home thinking, the one in Florida is better anyway. It's no contest. Florida's Tower of Terror is far more superior than the one in DCA could ever dream of. From its longer and winding queue, to the less exaggerated boiler room, to the extra fifth dimension section that was never even in the DCA version, and especially the random drop sequences that keep this ride from being predictable. I have ridden the Guardians of the Galaxy makeover in DCA, and to be honest, it's pretty damn good. But it still falls short to the one in Florida. As of recording, I haven't ridden the Tower of Terror in Japan, so I'll put a pin on that until I get over there. Nevertheless, if you want the superior Disney elevator drop ride in the States, the choice is definitely in Florida. Alrighty then, that concludes today's episode of the Magic Hangover, today's pilot episode. Let me know what you guys thought of it, and let me know what rides you rode in the last decade in the comments below. And hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, why don't you consider subscribing?